Hi, I'm PhiDX, and this is Ask a Pro. Nam Chill Thanks asks, how do you feel about the importance of legacy information in Tekken 8 compared to older titles? Is it better to have 3 characters in the pocket or be a master at 1? I feel like those are 2 different questions. Legacy information is still very important. They're doing a lot of things to attack, like legacy string information, but the ability to space around moves and look at your opponent's threats and answer them with movement or attacks or hard ducking, that's still very relevant. Legacy skill is still really important. Is it better to have 3 characters in the pocket or be a master at 1? In this game, I think it's good to have multiple characters, but it's worthless to have a bunch of mediocre characters compared to being really good at 1. I would say master at 1 for most people. Kyle at Games asks, between playing, coaching, and content making, what's your favorite right now? Oh, that's really hard, because when I play, my ego activates, and I don't like losing. And when I'm coaching, it's really rewarding in a different way. And then obviously, content making is my primary thing right now, and I really, really enjoy doing that. So I'd say right now I'm having a good time playing because it's peak tournament season, and I like the cycle of training, improving. It's probably a tie between playing and content making. It's hard to decide. At Channel KYX asks, how do I find motivation to check replays against obscure characters like Jack or Raven? Chances that I play them again in the near future are minuscule, and when I do, I probably already forgot what I tried to learn in the replay. For me, the motivation is I don't like losing. So it doesn't matter how little I'll see them if I really remember the feeling of losing to them. To avoid forgetting, I just have a bunch of notes on a bunch of characters, and if it's an unfamiliar matchup, I'll open up my Google Docs in a new tab or on my phone and just double check quick notes really quick. 542 Sing asks, talk us through the process of how and the reasons why it takes so long to train a character to be competition ready in Tekken, and why it's so impressive, especially in Tekken, to see players specialize in multiple characters. The obvious answer is probably that there's 150 moves per character, so that's one thing. The other thing is wielding those moves, even though you don't use all of them all the time, in the many situations that other characters put you in is a big challenge. So you're not only trying to master your character and flow state with that character and all their 150 plus moves, you're trying to answer the opponent's moves in those situations with the right move from your arsenal. Just from a numbers standpoint, it's a lot. And then you add the 3D component and the fact that some characters sidestep differently than other characters, some characters backdash differently than other characters. And yeah, it's really, really hard. A lot of people have told me that it takes 1 to 2 years to become really proficient and have a solid tournament world-class level main character. And that's pretty hard to do. And that's why I think it's so impressive when players like Arslan or Ni can bring out multiple characters in tournament, because they're not just pulling out a pocket character. It's a world-class tournament-ready character that they're using in championship matches. I'm Emil asks, at what point does a pop-off go from insanely hype to cringe? I think authenticity is everything, right? There are very clear examples of people who think a certain action would be hype and then do it, and you can tell they're not really selling it, or they don't really have their heart and soul behind it. And people can see that. Body language is very telling. I think some of the coolest pop-offs are the most authentic ones. They don't have to be ridiculous, like somebody hitting the stage or something dumb like that. But it could just be a simple fist pump, and if they really, really feel it, it can be just as inspiring. 8-Way Funds asks, how do you get yourself to properly lab when you don't feel an attachment to the character? That's a really hard one. It depends what you're labbing. Are you labbing defense? Are you labbing offense? Are you labbing combos? I think it's important to find a balance between things that feel natural. So if you naturally like labbing defense, keep doing that. If you naturally like labbing combos, do that. But if you aren't really feeling your character and just want to play matches, just do that too. Eventually you'll hit a point where you kind of know that you need to work on something, and that's the time. If you're climbing the ranks and then eventually you keep dropping that same combo, maybe it's time to take a look. Golden Boy 808 asks, what character do you think is super unexplored in the meta currently? Do you predict any breakout characters in the coming months? That's a hard question, because I think North America has the most character diversity. We don't play in a way where you see people always hitting the top tiers and grinding against each other. We have lots of people willing to play their main characters and kind of push them as far as they can go. I think of how many Lilies and Yoshimitsus we have compared to, say, Pakistan, which doesn't have many of either character. In terms of predicting breakout characters, I don't think it's going to be out of meta picks. I think it's going to be the really high tier characters that required some optimization. I think we're going to see more Nina, definitely going to see more Yoshimitsu. I still think Lily has a lot to be explored. Steve is obviously really scary. Even before the balance changes, we were going to see more characters pop up just as people get better. Jarrell Pryor asks, if you could change one TWT rule, what would it be and why? I think coaching is difficult for the spectators, for one. But as someone who benefits from coaching and likes giving coaching, it's hard for me to root against that rule. I would say the first TWT rule I'd want to change is to explore where first to 3 would be a good format. I think Tekken 8 is really volatile, but also rewards a lot of skill. So if there's a world where we can get first to 3 top 8s or first to 3 top 16s, I think it would be really cool to see the competitive changes that come about because of that format. Not Kubi asks, as a coach, what are the most common things that hold a player back? I like that question because it's kind of high coverage, but I think there's no good answer to that. I think every player, every person learns games and anything a lot differently from everybody else. The benefit of coaching is that you can really start to understand how a particular person learns and how you can help address their issues for that particular person. I will say that as a coach, I'm most passionate about helping people be more gentle with themselves. Learning any kind of taxing hobby or like challenging hobby can be a really emotionally difficult experience. And I'm really passionate about helping people let go of the things that are painful about it and find joy in the process of what they're doing. We don't have to win these tournaments all the time. We don't have to get these amazing results to get the certain rank we're looking for. But having fun doing your combos and getting better defense and stuff like that will often get you closer to the goals that you're often chasing. Loving the process is a big focus I like when I'm coaching. Turtleman21 asks, I think a big question I have is, how does one keep their composure when fighting a player who is higher level than you? How does one learn from an ass beating? They don't know what you're gonna do. And in a first to 2, anything can happen. So your character still has really strong tools, and sure, some things you do might be predictable, but ultimately when it comes to a first to 2, especially in tournament, you have the elements of surprise on your side. Tournaments are not always about who has the best Tekken, it's who is playing the best in that match on that day. Use that to your advantage. If a pro's having a bad day, don't be afraid to play dirty. Sometimes you gotta do the cheesy thing that just happens to be working. Save the clean Tekken, or whatever your idea of clean Tekken is, for practice, training, and then when it comes to tournament time, it's a street fight. Just do what it takes to win, in the game. Lasergician asks, how important are regional styles, and what can we learn from them? Regional styles are really beneficial to look at, especially when you're learning your own character. So it's good to have a context of why certain people are piloting your character in a certain way, right? If you looked at Korean Steve players in Tekken 7, you would be convinced the character plays a certain way. Then if you look at a Pakistani Steve player, you might think that's wrong if your background is a Korean Steve reference point. In reality, nobody really knows what the best style is. We all have our ideas. But taking what you can from each region is going to make you a stronger player. So it's good to have idols, I think, and it's good to have models to imitate when you try to improve your play. But consider that we don't really know what the actual best style is. Take what you can and make your character work with it. Rose Honobara asks, how do I go into an event or set without letting my nerves get to me? The secret is everybody's nervous. The offline experience especially will amp people up. Some people actually play better when they're nervous. And I know that's a foreign concept to me, for one, and people that might ask this question. Nerves and that kind of adrenaline amp up can help you perform better. So it's not a matter of removing nerves, it's a matter of learning to play through them. Me personally, I've done a lot of training where I will literally just breathe and look at the screen and hit my buttons and not do any analysis, not do any critical thinking, just literally breathing and looking at the screen. And after 2 years of doing that in Tekken 7, I got a lot better at managing my nerves. But it's still pretty hard. I get nervous a lot too. Keep getting experience, keep training through it, and you'll get better. The Zype asks, Yo Phi, what is the most underrated skill to master in Tekken? Underrated depends who you ask. Certain regions might think that blocking is an underrated skill. Other regions might think mashing is an underrated skill. It really depends on who you talk to and what your perspective is. Tekken is fundamentally a game of mids and lows. So whatever skills it takes to deal with those are probably beneficial to you. Einhe All, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, asks, what would be a beginner routine drill before dipping toes in ranked? What would be level 2 intermediate? This again is pretty difficult to generalize because different players are good at different things, but being able to break throws and block punish is a very core fundamental. So if you can't do those, whether it's against all characters or some characters, that's worth improving. The idea is that you want to take away any free damage your opponent can get on you, which is throws, and make sure you collect any free damage your opponent gives to you, which is block punishment. You don't necessarily have to do it before dipping your toes into ranked. It really depends, again, if you are more of a lab player, more of a practical application player. Plenty of pro players have different strengths, so just find what works best for you. In terms of level 2 or intermediate drills, there's a lot of sidestep blocking, sidestep ducking that you can do that covers multiple options. It's hard for me to demonstrate a drill here if I don't have the game in front of me, but that's what my channel is for. If I find a cool drill, I'll be sure to share it. XXenoHo asks, how do you plan and set up easy, digestible guides? When I write a guide, I try not to assume what is known outside of like a few reasonable things. If I'm doing a total beginner guide, I might not use too much notation. But if I'm talking about like, say, timings or spacings, I'll probably assume that you've played the game and can use some notation. So kind of making some decent assumptions about what a player might know, I think is really important, and being really tactical with that is a big deal in terms of making a guide easy to digest. For better or worse over my life, I've liked figuring out how to talk a lot. And if what I say makes sense, people tend to listen more. So when I write my guides, I kind of flow with it and then I'll reassess it, right? I used to do a lot of writing as a kid, like in school. And if my writing wasn't good, like it didn't make sense to me, I figured it wouldn't make sense to anyone else. It's been a lifelong process of just evaluating what I say and what I write. And if it makes sense and is a little better each time, then it starts to become natural. PES Charlie asks, what is the most time-efficient way to practice, learn, etc.? Like a bunch of the other questions, that's kind of a player-by-player thing, right? If you talk to a lot of Pakistani players, they are like grind matches over and over and over again. They really value practical applications and learning. But there are other players who benefit a lot from building drills and then like practicing defense in the drill setting and then applying those drills to matches later. If you want an idea of what I do, I am a practical match player. A lot of people will call me a lab rat, but really I enjoy just playing a lot of games and talking to people, right? Like, how minus is that? How plus is this? How do you step that? And verifying what you're told in the practice mode is always important too. And then I take notes. I take a lot of notes to try and make sure that that valuable experience isn't lost because I didn't write it down. For anybody who's trying to learn Tekken, I think it can be very intimidating, right? There's so many moves, so many people have opinions on what's right and wrong, what's strong, what's weak, what's honorable or dishonorable. I think it's important to remember that it's a game, and I say that not to demean people who take it seriously, like I take it pretty seriously. But it's important to remember that your focus on the game should be finding fun or a win within the scope of what that game offers, right? So whether or not somebody calls something honorable, dishonorable, honest, or like unfair, it doesn't matter if their HP goes to 0, right? And that can be kind of your guiding principle. Tekken is a game with 60 seconds and an HP bar, and you just gotta be ahead when the time runs out or reduce theirs to 0. And if your goals are going towards that objective, then you're probably on the right track.